Have you ever played a game so good you just can't shut the f up about it?
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth!
Gosh, you've been in here for ages. What are you doing?
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth! Final Fantasy VII Rebirth!
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Hello.
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth!
What's it?
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth?
Yeah, and?
Well, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Been having a job. Fantastic.
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. What we have right here is one of Square Enix's greatest video games of all time. This game is just flat out genuinely insane, and I really do not believe that we have seen a game from Square Enix, let alone just a Final Fantasy title, to this level of quality. And that's not to say that any previous release from Square has been lacking, not to say that something like Final Fantasy 16 wasn't good, Final Fantasy 15 wasn't good, Kingdom Hearts 3 wasn't good, but I just mean that when I look at Rebirth, it blows my mind in several different ways, just with the sheer amount of content that's available in this game, all while maintaining an absolutely absurd level of quality. Rebirth is something ridiculously good. This is some
good f***ing food.
Final Fantasy VII Remake that came out in 2020 was my personal game of the year, and it was simply fantastic. What Square Enix have done here, though, is they've taken everything that was on offer for Remake and have toned it up several giga levels above for Rebirth. All of those things that you felt like were missing in Remake's experience is here in Rebirth. Way more RPG elements, we've finally got exploration, there is an abundance of content. I mean a ridiculous amount of content. You are going to be drowning in stuff to do. Rebirth is the perfect example of a video game sequel done right, where it completely knocks the first original entry out of the park and does everything in its power to make the second time around such a better experience. Very similar to what we saw with Ratchet & Clank 2, Sly 2, Red Dead Redemption 2, Street Fighter 2, Uncharted 2, Half-Life 2. Rebirth, without a doubt, fits into the perfect sequel category. Rebirth is an open world game, and when it comes to Final Fantasy and open world, this is a genre that the series hasn't attempted to do all too often. Really, the only other Final Fantasy game that's ever attempted open world was 15. I think the open world genre has taken on a little bit of an evolution through Breath of the Wild releasing back in 2017. It's sort of changed the way that I feel like developers now approach open worlds. This new approach really seems like devs are wanting to pique the player's interest constantly, and keeping this momentum of everything you're doing in an open world counts towards meaningful progression. So if I'm comparing 15's open world setup to that of Rebirth's open world, 15 in comparison feels like a very empty game. Because great turkey titties of the north, there is so much to do in this open world setup. You got treasure chest locations, you got Mog stools where the Moogles live, you got Chocobo stops, which will get 1 plume per post. These plumes can be used to buy new clothes for your chicken. You got Chocobo loot that you can dig out with your Chocobo, you got Remnant Wave towers, you got sanctuaries. We got ourselves a little bit of horse lassoing. Wait, no, that's chicken. You got proto-relics, which can lead you into a 4-step quest chain that leads you into other ways to play the game, like mini-games. Excavation sites that you go to with your Chocobo that you can dig up some brand new recipes for the item crafting. Oh yeah, there's now item crafting, so you can finally now make your own soups instead of having to buy them all the time. Woohoo! Combat assignments require you to discipline the wildlife of the world. Live streams, we get to examine crystals close up, and in return we get lore and information on the region we're in, as well as give us locations towards world bosses and excavation sites. Oh yeah, there's also world bosses too. Photo opportunity spots to help this guy called Snaps build his Instagram. There is literally a benefit to doing all of these different activities in the open world. Aside from the unique benefits that you'll reap from each individual activity, overall doing any of these will reward you with world intel points, which is the currency used to buy new materia from Chadley, and you're also receiving party XP for most of the activities you're doing here, which is used in order to unlock further abilities for each of the party members. The open world activity loop is addicting. It's one of those open world games where you just want to see and do every single marker and location on the map, you will become a checklist Kyle playing this game. All you want to do is tick boxes. I should also mention too that Chadley is very much more so involved in Rebirth compared to Remake. And this is cool for me because I love Chadley. He is an awesome new addition to the new Final Fantasy VII trilogy, and he's very much more involved here. He's always talking to you as you do different things out in the open world.
Hey, yo, what's going on, Big C? The Chad Meister himself, what's the haps, brother?
And oh my god, the combat simulator has seen a massive overhaul. It is essentially Rebirth's Coliseum of the game. There are so many different things to do in the combat sim. It's not just set up now to verse the summons in order to get the summon materia. There is so many different challenges here. But even though I say that the combat simulator is basically like the new Coliseum, there's also a Coliseum in this game, plus a Beast Arena. So there's really 3 Coliseums in this game to put your fighting skills to the test. And don't even get me started on the mini games. Holy is that garlic guacamole. Get ready for this. We got Moogle Wrangling, Poor Condor, Yoko Shimamura Simulator, Dolphin Jump, Formation Parade, Shooting Range, G-Bike, 3D Brawler Gummy Ship, Chocobo Racing, very good by the way. Trying to steal inflatable Chocobo. Okay, this isn't actually a mini game. This is a game that I made up for myself while I was in the Gold Saucer, but this is very fun. Do this. Desert Rush, which is Whack-A-Box from Remake, except better. We've got Mushroom Plucking. Why? I don't know, but it's here. We got Chicken Flying, we got Battle Bots, we got Red Soccer, and we got Minecart Shooter. Interrupting the most important international TV broadcast was a personal favorite of mine. Okay, again, like the Chocobo thing, this is not an actual minigame. It's something I made up, but I highly recommend. Those are just some, by the way. Those aren't all. There are more in the game, but there is an overwhelming amount of additional little minigame things to do. And the great thing about these too is, again, meaningful progression. There is generally like 3 different rankings that you can get, scores to beat for these minigames, and they all have their own individual rewards. And don't even get me started on Queen's Blood. This junk right here is like a game in a game. I'm fairly certain that due to the popularity of this right now, Square Enix will probably end up making Queen's Bloodlight into its own standalone thing, which everyone is begging for. Let this be known, I hate card games, alright? I'm no Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Master Pokemon TCG World Champ by any means, but this goes hard. I like this. All over the open world, there are different Queen's Blood opponents to verse. One thing I really appreciated is each of the opponents have their own distinct personalities. Like, for instance, one is a dog. It's just straight up a dog. You verse a dog at a card game. This is great. There's about 140 different cards to collect via buying booster packs, or each time you defeat an opponent, you win a card. Cards all have different abilities and different things that they can do whilst on the board. There's an entire narrative that's behind Queen's Blood as well, like a storyline, which is insane. Like, this didn't need to be in the game at all with the sheer amount of content that's already on offer without Queen's Blood, but Square decided, F it, we're gonna throw this in just cause our 100-hour video game is still not long enough. And for anyone that doesn't like card games, you're now gonna like card games. Looking at the gameplay combat side of things, I feel like Square Enix did a fantastic job with Remake, bringing in what is a reminiscent feeling of old school Final Fantasy mixing into real-time action RPG. By having the ATB system in the game, this is required in order to pull off spells or unique abilities. That means that there's sort of like this turn system, all while it's still maintaining to be that of a real-time combat system. It's fantastic, and it's further refined here in Rebirth. Finally, aerial combat is viable for the likes of Cloud and Tifa. There are specific different synergy skills that can be used to flick the characters up into the air, or for the likes of Cloud, he can actually just flick himself up into the air to start fighting in an aerial sense. Aerial combat is good, and it was one sticking point of Remake that felt very awful to engage in. The parry materia and deadly dodge materia have just been infused into the moveset, so now characters just dodge quicker, and for the likes of Tifa and Cloud, this is so much better for the momentum of combat and the moment-to-moment gameplay feeling so much quicker. It also means that dodging is a little bit more viable here overall throughout the entire experience of Rebirth compared to Remake. Deadly Dodge has also just been infused into the moveset, so now when you dodge an attack, you'll perform a unique attack. It's no longer a materia. Cloud's now got ranged capabilities as part of his basic moveset. For now, when he dodges and then follows up with an attack, he sends out blade waves. There is finally a perfect guard system. Don't know why this wasn't in Remake, but it feels so good and encourages the player to use block more often. If you pull this off, not only will you completely ignore all damage from the enemy's attack, but you'll also apply stagger to their stagger meter. So this is something that the player will definitely want to use. This just adds a lot more depth to the combat system, and not just that, but looking at the sheer amount of new materia and the sheer amount of materia slots across all of the equipment in the game, you can build your party setup so much deeper than you ever could in Remake. If we're looking at just like the general progression of strengthening your characters, it is a little bit different here in Rebirth. Folios are a brand new thing, basically taking out the weapon upgrade system from Remake entirely. I think people didn't really want all of their stats to just be dependent on the weapon you're using, but rather actually to build like permanent stats for each of your characters, and this is exactly what the Folios system does. Don't worry, there's still a weapon level in the game, and as that increases, the base stats of the weapon go up. You unlock more materia slots for the weapon. There's this new thing known as weapon skills, which are basically like enhancement gems. Every single weapon has its own little collection of weapon skills, and as you upgrade your weapon, you'll unlock more of those, but on top of that, also unlock more weapon skill slots. Honestly, I definitely prefer Rebirth's system of progression compared to Remake's. We should talk a little bit about the synergy system because it is sort of new for Rebirth, or should I say more so expanded, as it was introduced in Intermission. Synergy skills and abilities are different, so let's talk about abilities. These are the big flashy ones where two characters will team up to perform a unique attack. Think of team attacks from Kingdom Hearts. Limits. There's a new resource gauge that is required to pull these off. If both characters have the set amount of required resource, then you can unleash these attacks. These are great because they give you an additional edge in combat, not just to dish out some really nice damage and give you a really flashy animation between two characters, but you also get passive bonuses like infinite MP once you've used that synergy ability for a limited amount of time for the two characters. And the skills are more so less intense, pretty versions of those synergy abilities that can be used at any point. No ATBs required, no MPs required. These are super fun to pull off, and they're all different depending on what two characters you have in your party. Again, the depth of the party system in this game is increased tenfold here in Rebirth. The friendship system is also another big new thing, allowing you to basically level up your relationship status with all of the party members. I think this is something that deep fans of Final Fantasy VII's characters will really enjoy. It's very fan servicey in some regards, but it's just cool to understand more of how a character is feeling in a certain moment. This also allows you to answer questions, and if you answer correctly, it will increase that friendship gauge. Another way to increase the friendship gauge is to perform those synergy skills and abilities in combat or side quests. Side quests are another massive part of the world content, and they're so much better here in Rebirth. I did feel like the majority sort of odd jobs and side quests in Remake were a little bit filler. There were some okay ones there, but they weren't anything to sort of remember the game by, whereas here in Rebirth, they are meaningful, like really meaningful. Some are giving you like fully fledged cutscenes that give you backstory towards pretty important events from either what is going on in Rebirth or what happened in Remake. Like there's some stuff here where it's like, why was that not included in the main story? That's just how good the side quests are. I think Square Enix really paid attention to the feedback about the side quests from Remake because they weren't all that well received. The game feeling very filler-like. But not only are these important for getting stuff like, you know, XP, skill tomes to give you more SP and other really good equipment, but also this strengthens your bonds with your party members. If a certain side quest involves a certain party member, then you will increase your relationship with that party member. Also dependent on how well you performed in that side quest. Sometimes there's different levels of how well you can do if there is a certain minigame that the side quest involves. If you do really well in that said minigame, that relationship level will increase furthermore. So the music of Remake was definitely an aspect of the game to remember it by, because my god, were there some god tier tracks in that game. But like, this game here tones that up tenfold. Again, I don't know how they keep doing this, but Hamazu as well as Suzuki decided, alright, we did really well for Remake. Let's go banana tier. Let's go balls to the walls and make the gamer jump up and down or feel some kind of feeling while they're playing this video game. I am telling you right now, this music, for me personally, in Rebirth, is at the exact same level as KH2 and KH3's music for me. There are some incredibly good tracks. The composing of this game is ridiculous. I don't know how they bet Remake score. You've got all those bangers from Remake, plus you've got more, and some that are actually better than what was on offer in Remake. It's ridiculous. Here are the 7 stages of listening to Rebirth soundtrack. Now visually, this is one of the best games I think I have ever seen, and considering that Rebirth, now being open world, taking us to all kinds of different environment types, really allows the team at Square to show off the maximum power of the visual fidelity of how gorgeous Final Fantasy can look, because this is jaw-dropping. However though, I will say, this game does have its moments sometimes where there is this really awkward looking, awful texture that looks like it's been ripped straight out of the PS3 era. It just has little moments like this, and maybe some of these things will get fixed or patched or something. However, most of the time, the game just looks fantastic. We really are getting to that stage of like these games from Square looking like they do in the CG cutscenes that you see. I used to always tell myself back in the day, you know, like looking at the Kingdom Hearts CG cutscenes or Final Fantasy ones, wow, imagine when we get to that point where video games look as good as these. And like, damn is it getting close, especially with the character models. The Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth character models are phenomenal. Some of the best in the industry. I need to give a special mention to just the general atmosphere of Rebirth. It is so enveloping. Especially looking at like the main town hub areas, it's just brimming with life, with people doing all sorts of different weird things, whether it be dancing around, chatting to one another. This dude here sitting at this table with a whole collection of stuffed toys. There's so much unique charm and wonder when it comes to the world of Rebirth, and I can only imagine how crazy it is to see all of these really iconic locations for people that ended up playing the original Final Fantasy back on the PlayStation 1 all of those years ago. To see it recreated in this sense must get that heart rate pumping way beyond the healthy limit. Now, I don't want to say too much about the story because I just don't want to spoil anything. This is a game that needs to be experienced by you and you only, and not you hearing through a third party. But it's great. It is definitely more enticing, kept me more engaged compared to Remake. Do keep in mind too, for me personally, I never experienced the original Final Fantasy VII, so most of this experience is all new for me. I understand that obviously the story is taking a little bit of a different direction, being that this is a little bit more of a reimagining, but actually still considers and takes into account the original story. Basically, of course, we know that the concept of the Whispers are trying to keep the characters on the main path that they should follow via the story of the original game, but they do decide to sort of defy fate as seen in Remake. We get a little bit more information towards that, in fact actually quite a lot. It is still very confusing, I will say that, but I think overall this story is so much better because Rebirth is the core of that original Final Fantasy VII experience, going out, leaving Midgar, and going to all of the different regions and locations. There is just a lot more story to kind of dip and dive into, especially when looking towards like backstory for characters. There are also that many more characters this time around. The party finally expands upwards to that of 7. However, it is super engaging. You're always sitting there wondering what is going to happen next. There's never really a dull moment or boring filler or padding or any of that kind of thing. I think the general flow of the story for Rebirth is just a lot better than what was on offer for Remake. Nothing against Remake, I just think, again, they have done such a great job of improving the quality that was on show for Remake, furthermore here for Rebirth. The last thing I'm going to say is physics. I like physics, and there's a lot of physics here in Rebirth. It was in Remake, but kind of a little bit more here in Rebirth. Look at them all rolling around. This is fun. I did this a lot. Any sort of trash can, box, barrel that I came across, oh, you bet your ass I was moving it. Now, I ended up finishing the game at the 52-hour mark. It got to a point in the game where it's like, okay, I just need to like beeline it to the end and stop doing side content so that I can see the end, so that I can start doing this video right here. The game just sort of at a point refused to end. That's not a bad thing at all, but this is a big experience. This is a juicy roast beef. Now, if you want to see absolutely everything the game has to offer, you're looking at about 100 hours. If you're wanting to do the platinum, you're looking at anywhere from 150 to 200 hours. This is mainly because you have to replay the entire game again on hard mode, but there is so much to keep the player engaged and entertained. As of right now, I am basically on my way to doing absolutely everything. I think I will get another video out at some point in the future to talk about more of the completionist side and additional content, but this is one big boy package. I could definitely talk more about Rebirth because there's just so much to it, but I think that gives you guys a basic understanding of this game is f***ing marvelous. It is, without a doubt, my new favorite Final Fantasy. I think previously it was actually 15, funnily enough. Even with Remake there included, I think it was still 15, but this just knocks any other Final Fantasy experience for me personally out of the park. Square Enix listened to the fan base. They listened to the critiques of Remake and the feedback that was given and refined and improved absolutely every aspect for Rebirth, which gets me further excited to see exactly what they will do for the third and final game. Though it's got me curious considering that the final portion of the game really will just be taking place, hopefully in Wutai, but mainly up in the north section of the world, how they're going to be able to outdo the sheer size and magnitude that is Rebirth. It's certainly going to be interesting. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's video. Hopefully you are now enjoying the game for yourselves. If you're not though, what are you doing? Honestly, what do you not like gaming? Do you not like video games? Do you not like to remain happy through pixels? Play this game right now. Thanks so much to my wonderful patrons. You guys are absolutely turkey-tastic. Appreciate the support. Be sure to subscribe here to the channel to keep up with all the latest. Check out my other social media platforms. With all that being said, guys, I'm Cynical. Hopefully you're having a fantastic day, and we'll talk real soon.